On the line now, State MP for Lara, John Eren. Good morning. Thanks for being on the program.
Good morning, Mitchell, and good morning to your listeners. What a beautiful day it is today.
It is, and I tell you what, it was a nice weekend as well, and I know a lot of Geelong people were enjoying that feeling of freedom and being able to leave the house without having to have one of the 4 reasons. When you think about COVID-19, there's so many different elements we could talk about, whether it's Parliament, whether it's the opposition wants to move a motion of no confidence, whether it's the encouraging case numbers that you see coming out today. I mean, where do you start?
Oh, well, the good news is I think we're beating this virus. I think collectively, and I want to congratulate all people that live in regional Victoria and indeed all of Victoria. So the new numbers today that there are no new cases in Geelong and there are only 2 active cases, and the rolling 14 days average is 1.6 and no new cases in Geelong, which is great news. And Melbourne is not far behind. They have 11 new cases in Melbourne. And when you consider, Mitchell, that not that long ago there were over, 800 cases and new cases, and it was really frightening. And considering in the short time frame that we've now knuckled down, I suppose, in relation to tackling this virus, we've come a long way. So Melbourne is doing great as well, and we've jumped the step and we're in step 3, and we're hoping that if this trend continues in suppressing this virus, that come September 23 and indeed September 28, the key dates, and we continue with no new cases for 14 days rolling, we will see further easing of restrictions, which is great. I mean, over the weekend, my wife and I took our grandkids to Stevenson's Falls in the Otways, and we spent a few hours walking around and looking at the waterfalls, and it was wonderful. It was great. We sort of, this time last year, we didn't have any restrictions on our lives, and I suppose you don't appreciate things when you've got them, and when you do lose that opportunity, then there's a great sense of relief to a certain extent that we're still able to do what recently, due to easing of restrictions, we can do some of these things, and I suppose that's the light at the end of the tunnel for us. Until we have a vaccine, we still need to be vigilant. There's no question of that. And I know, the tough stance that this government has taken has its toll on communities. And I totally understand that, and I get it. And there are certain sections of our community that just don't get it. They say, why do we have to restrict our lives and our freedoms? And as we can see, that there are still some people that persist in actually accepting that this virus is real, and unfortunately there are some sections of the community that totally disregard this virus and say that it doesn't exist, and they're the ones that I suppose at the end of the day that risk it for the rest of the community, because they don't believe it. They don't believe that there are over 750 deaths in Victoria related to COVID. And this is some of the challenges that government have, and we can see it play out on social media. That vocal minority on social media are I suppose, exciting the opposition in a sense that they think that there's a rebellion against the government as a result of some of these tough stances the government's taking in relation to this virus. And to a certain extent, it's saddening to see that politics is creeping into something that we all should be united for. Whilst I understand that there are inherently some mistakes that may have been made through certain actions of people, and the fact of the community, I should say, and the fact that the government are looking through all of those things at the moment to see how we can do our job better in terms of containing this virus. It's a once in a century pandemic, and I don't think any government across the globe knew how to deal with it appropriately in relation to what was at hand. And by and large, when you compare us to other cities around the world and how many lives they've lost, we've done quite well. And there are comparisons being made interstate. That was due to certain different types of transmissions that were going on in New South Wales and Queensland and other states and territories compared to what we went through in Victoria. And I hope they never go through that. I hope that there's no other state that goes through a second wave. But it's looking increasingly dangerous in New South Wales with a cab driver that could be a super spreader. And we know how, like a bushfire, this virus does take over very quickly. And so I hope that they're vigilant in New South Wales, that they don't have a second wave. But it looks like Victoria has had its second wave, and we have contained it quite well in the sense that obviously that the numbers are so low. We will continue down the path of making sure that we beat this virus, because there's nothing worse, Mitchell, than a third wave if it comes our way. Hopefully it doesn't, and we're pretty confident that once we can suppress this thing, we can control and maintain it, and we don't have to close businesses, and we don't have to go into full lockdowns like we have been over the past few weeks. And so we've come so far. We shouldn't, be too anxious to get at all of our freedoms all at once, so that we can go back into a third wave if it's lurking. So we understand as a government at this point in time, there are some people that are extremely anxious about what's going on, but we're trying to do the best that we can under the circumstances. So I just want to relay that to your listeners.
Just on that point about freedoms and the easing of restrictions, 2 listener questions of interest. 1, when will gyms reopen? And 2, masks. Are they going to be around for the long term, or will there be a time when we won't have to wear masks outdoors anymore?
As for the gymnasiums, again, I stress, Mitchell, that we take the advice of the CHO, the Chief Health Officer, and according to the modelling that's been done, and according to what is the most dangerous locations, particularly indoors, and that's why we're trying to move everything outdoors now, and even dining to a certain extent. There will be a lot more outdoor dining than indoor. Indoors are a bad place for COVID. Whilst I understand the angst of gymnasiums, it is gymnasiums. I mean, I frequented gymnasiums a fair bit in my time, and
yes,
it's a sweaty location, and people sweat, and that's why you're in the gym. Though even before COVID, people were encouraged to use towels and bring their own towels and wipe their sweat off the seats and so on after they've used the equipment, the treadmills and so on. And there is a lot of fluid, bodily fluid that goes in the air through your sweat, through your heavy breathing, and obviously it is indoors. That is a deadly combination to catch COVID. So we're mindful. If we can get the cases down to 0. Rolling over the 14 days to 0. There is no cases out there. And again, I've got to encourage people, if they have the slightest of symptoms, that they should get checked. If it wasn't for some of the sewage testing that goes on, we wouldn't have known that Apollo Bay had any cases of COVID. And so we will be vigilantly looking every way that we can, through testing, through the sewage, to see if this COVID is out there, because there's nothing worse than hiding your symptoms, hiding the fact that, you might have COVID, and then you go and spread it out in the community, and here we go again for the third wave. So for gymnasiums, if it goes to plan, if the numbers are suppressed, it won't be long before we get back. I don't think we could ever go back to a normal life. I think we all need to be cautious, and until there's a vaccine, like I said, I don't think we could have a normal life. So it might be that all the restrictions are removed except for the mask, or it might be that we need to make certain adjustments to the way we interact within the community. The hugging, the shaking of hands. Maybe they're all things that we should be mindful until we get a vaccine. Once we have the vaccine and it's looking good, and we're trying to make sure that we are prepared for the rollout of the vaccine. There is anticipation that there might be a vaccine by the end of the year and hopefully early next year. But see how that testing goes. But until then, Mitchell, unfortunately, this is our lives now. This is, unless we want to see these massive amounts of people dying again due to COVID, then we've got to act accordingly. And as a government, we definitely do not want a third wave.
Very quickly, State Parliament. I've been watching a bit of State Parliament. I see you've got the big Perspex screens up. Does that mean that State Parliament can sit almost on the calendar that it normally would?
In October, I think we're headed that way. I think we're, because of the case numbers going down, and we're suppressing the virus, which is fantastic. And I think by October, I think we'll probably all hands on deck. And obviously there are some again, a security guard was detected with COVID at Parliament. So we all need to be vigilant. There's regional Victorian MPs are not attending Parliament at the moment because of the differences and the restrictions that we have in regional Victoria compared to Melbourne. But I would suspect, according to the numbers that are being provided daily, that it's decreasing. That in October we should be back at Parliament.
Well, that's good news. Thank you very much for being on the program. Really appreciate it. We'll catch up with you again next month.
Thanks, Mitchell. Bye.
Thank you, John Eren there, the State MP for Lara.